Welcome, Mindsetters, to this exciting session of Maths Lit today. I'm here with Haley.
Hi, Ty.
You know what?
Good to
I'm
be here.
excited. I'm excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. I'm excited about today's lesson.
Me too. Me too.
Today we're going to be doing measurement, and we're going to be dealing with length and distance. And I'm looking forward to, getting going.
I'm also excited. I'm excited. It's always like whenever I come to these lessons, it's like refreshing for me. I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's cool. I remember that. But anyway, guys, you know the drill. Make sure you get on the Facebook page at www.facebook.com/learnextra. Get chatting to me, speak to me. If you're lost anywhere, if you need help, you know what to do. Hit me up. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Haley, who's going to take over the show.
Thanks, Ty. Okay, first of all, I said we're going to be doing measurements, and we're really dealing with length and distance today. We know there are other measurements. We discussed a couple of them when we did conversions, but we'll do that at a later stage. Before we start, let's find some blank paper. We need our numbers. So last week we were on 9,267, and today, let's do that in red, today we are on, Ty, give me the number.
We are on 9,546. Sorry, I had to refresh because I always refresh and there's like 3 other people who've just liked.
So well, we just had to wait a second. 9,546. Guys, we are so close to our 10,000, and we're going to have a party then. So we're about like 450 short. Guys, tell your friends, like our page. We want to have this party. But I think if it's not next week, it'll probably be the week after, so look out for us, because we're growing at about 300 kind of a week. So I think we're doing well.
We're doing very well. Like, I'm impressed. I was just like, every show, there's like a couple more people who just keep
Absolutely. And it just seems like yesterday that we were like 8,000, so we're getting there. We are so close. I can actually feel it. Okay, let's carry on with today's lesson. So, starting off, no, we're in the wrong way. So, we're going to start off with perimeter. So first part of measurements is your perimeter. Now remember, perimeter is an outline. Have I got it right? It is the outline of a shape. It is one-dimensional. What do I mean by well, what happened there? It is one-dimensional. Basically, it is if you imagine yourself on the corner of a shape and you are walking around this shape. So our measurements for perimeter will always be in the single unit. Will basically be millimeters or centimeters, or maybe we would go to meters, even kilometers. We could think of that as a perimeter. It is the outline. And if you get stuck with this, think about it like this. Say, well, okay, I'm going to start here and I'm going to walk around the shape. So you can kind of say, well, there's my shape, and that's what I need to calculate. But having said that, I'm going to give you some formulas. I'm just going to give you the formulas. I'm not going to do any examples right now because we will go and do some questions where it'll all come into the questions. So if we're looking at a square, so I'm going to tell you that those sides are equal. Now, that is the length of the square. So the length is the same on all 4 sides. So what would my perimeter be? The formula, let's get a yellow pen. The formula for perimeter of a square is my length, and I'm going to times that by 4 because there are 4 sides. So it's 4L, or you can put a times in between it if you'd like. That's 4 times the length. If you struggle with this, then you can literally say, well, it's length plus length plus length plus length. That would be walking around the shape. So don't stress too much. And remember, guys, they're going to give you the formulas. So you don't have to worry too much. Oh, there's so much to remember. So we're not testing whether you know the formula. We're testing, can you apply the formula? So let's go to the next shape. Our next shape is a rectangle. And I'm going to say that that's the length. And now I've got a breadth. This is one of the things where my kids in my class get a little bit I'm not going to say confused, but a little bit stuck. Because they always say to me, which is the length and which is the breadth? And my answer to them is always, it doesn't really matter. The length and the breadth, I've decided that the short part is the length and the big one is the breadth, but it's not really important. Because if we times the two, we're going to get the same answer. Or if we add the length plus breadth or breadth plus length, we get the same kind of answer. So it's not important which way you use it. What I do want you to do is when you get a question like this, fill in the letters L and B, because it'll make it easier for you to not get confused later and swap them. So as long as your length is the same throughout your question, you won't have a problem. Right, so what is the perimeter? Well, the perimeter is, in fact, I'm going to walk around. So I'm going to start at this corner, and I'm going to say, well, okay, walk along there, I've got the length, plus I'm going to walk along there, I've got the breadth, and along there it's the same as the length, because those are equal, and going down, I've got the breadth. So that is my formula, but I can make it simpler, because I've got 2 lengths and 2 breadths. So to make the formula simpler, what I say is that the perimeter is 2 times the length plus the breadth. And an important concept to remember, I'm just deleting those lines for a second. An important concept to remember is when you have a shape that has right angles, that your opposite sides are equal. So let me actually try to highlight that. Let's see if I can highlight it with smiley faces. That side is equal to that side in length. So that's an important concept, and you'll see why when we get to one of our questions later on. Right, next shape, we've got a triangle. Now, on our triangle, we have to have sides. There are 3 sides to a triangle. So I'm literally going to label them side 1, side 2, and side 3. And I'm going to walk around my shape. So I'm going to start here and walk across. So my perimeter is my side 1 plus my side 2 plus my third side plus side 3. And that's as simple as it is, the formula. And lastly, we've got a circle, and extend a little bit of page. Let's just give us a radius. Well, first of all, when we've got a circle, let's just discuss this for a moment. My radius, the radius is from the center of the circle to the outside. That looked like a T. From the center of the circle to the outside. And no matter where I draw my radius, it will be the same, no matter where I draw it around the circle. We get another thing called the diameter. The diameter is, in fact, from, let's do this in a different color. My diameter is from the outside through the center to the outside. So it is out to the center to the outside. So what basically it is that my diameter is twice my radius, because from the center out I've got a radius, so there's a radius, and here I've got a radius. So my diameter is in fact 2 radii. And that's important because often they give you the diameter and they ask you to calculate the area or the perimeter, and you need to know the radius. So how do I get my radius then? I say, well, my radius, in fact, my diameter divided by 2. Right, and then what's our formula? Let's extend the page a little bit more. The formula, let's go back to our green. The formula for the perimeter is 2 times pi times the radius. Our 2r there can also be pi times the diameter, because there's my 2r, which is my diameter. Now, one point that I must make when I discuss the circle is that sometimes in your exams or in your textbooks or in your tests or whatever it is that you're doing, the examiners want you to use pi as a specific number. And they say use pi equals 3,14. If that comes up, I want you to ensure that instead of typing in pi on your calculator, you use those numbers. Now, for grade 10 level, I'm thinking that they will use this in every exam, because in actual fact, we don't have to use the scientific calculator. We only need to use the 4-function calculator. That's your plus, minus, times, whatever. So even though my calculator, I'm showing my calculator here, has a pi button, on the normal 4-function calculator, that button's missing. So we can see that pi is 3,1415. It carries on. They will tell you to use pi as 3,14. So instead of typing in the actual symbol, you will type in those numbers. Right, let's move on. Let's get rid of the calculator for a second. And let's move on to the next part of the Right, the area. I'm going to go through these formulas as well, and then we will do some examples. So, back to my square. Black is not going to work. Right, my square with, I've got a length. Remember, area is length times breadth. But in this case, I have a length times a length because my breadth and my length are the same. So I can actually simplify that and say the area for a square is length squared. I should have actually done this first. Talking about units, I was just going to say don't forget your units. Area, let's go up here for a sec. Area is, area is two-dimensional. Okay? It is the space that it takes up, just the two-dimension. It is always in millimeters squared, or centimeters squared, or meters squared. Kilometers squared, I suppose. We could work out the area of a town. Don't forget to add your units. So, coming back to the formulas, right, we've got our formula of our square. Let's see if we can get our rectangle. So I'm going to say that's my length, and there's my breadth. Using the same as I did earlier, just because it's easier. The area here is just length times breadth. All right, let's move on to a triangle. Ty, I hope I'm not going too fast for any of them and they're still able to follow me.
No,
So.
they're all right so far. So,
So far.
this is the basics, so I'm
The
sure they're
basics.
okay.
Good, okay. Let's look at our triangle. Now, on our triangle, I have a base. There's my base. And from my base, I need a perpendicular height. That means it's the height of the triangle that is at 90 degrees to the base. So I'm going to draw in a perpendicular height. And you can see that is 90 degrees to the base. So whenever you've got a triangle, look out for your 90 degrees because you need to have that. The one side's the base and the other is the perpendicular height. So this is the perpendicular height, and I use the symbol for perpendicular that looks like that, and perpendicular height. So my formula for the area is half the base times the perpendicular height. And that's the formula for the area. Now, I don't know why, but my kids do something really strange when it comes to triangle. And they always see the number for the base, and say, for example, it's 10. And they, in their heads, divide it by 2, and then they say, well, it's 5 times the perpendicular height. And I keep telling them not to do that. Rather, to substitute these numbers onto the calculator straight away. So how would we put this half onto a calculator? Well, on my calculator, let me get my calculator out. How would I do a half? Well, I would say 0,5. So use that in your formula, 0,5, and then you times by the base and times by the perpendicular height. I hope that you don't do that. Well, maybe you don't. Okay. And then let's look at our circle. Let's go to yellow here. Right. Our circle has got a radius. And remember again, your diameter is 2 radii. And the formula is, so that's with area equals pi times radius squared. Or we like to write it as pi r squared. Remember, if 2 letters or 2 symbols are next to each other, then it actually does mean multiply. And again, they're probably going to tell you to use pi times 3,14. So in actual fact, in this situation, your formula would be 3,14 times the radius squared. Okay. The area formula doesn't have the option of adding a diameter. So if you do have a diameter, I suggest you actually calculate the radius first. So take your diameter, divide by 2, and then substitute it into the formula. So those are all the actual formula that we're going to need for the next few questions. So I think let's go start with a question and see what the question says. Right. The learners maintain the garden in front of the Bloemfontein Primary School. I love the names in this question. Bloemfontein Primary School. Miss Bloem drew a diagram of the garden to show the parents. The parents must help with the buying of plants, and the grade 10 Maths Lit class must do the necessary calculations. So let's look at our drawing. Now, whenever you get a drawing like this, I want you to kind of like take a deep breath and relax and take it one step at a time. I know there are a lot of kids that think this section is so hard. I can't see it. I don't see the shapes. I don't see, and they panic. You're given the formulas, you're given the help, and if you take it one step at a time and label your diagram, add numbers to your diagram, add letters to your diagram, it'll actually make it easier. So I'm going to show you what I mean. So we've got, this is our garden, we've got A, B, C, D, E, and F, G, we've got what seems to be a pond, and let's read the question. Right, the theme of the garden is round and about. In circles, they'll plant different kinds of plants and bulbs. The rest of the area will be covered in lawn. So basically we're saying these, the A, B, C, D, and E, are going to be, and F, are going to be where they're planting plants, and the rest is going to be grass. The fish pond under the bridge covers an area of 35 meters squared. Now, when you see something like that, and you see a number, and it's referring to your diagram, go to your diagram and add that number. So that is 35, and you can see, can't see the yellow very well, so let's try purple. We're going to add that 35 meters squared. Add the numbers, because it'll make it easier for you when you're actually answering the question. Then it tells us the bridge G was measured and the dimensions are shown in the diagram. Well, let's go back to the diagram. Are they there you go. We've got our measurements on there. The area of circle B and E are the same. So let's label B and E are the same. So let's label those in two different colors. Okay, so let's make that purple. B and E are the same. And not a very good circle. Okay, and we've got the areas of D and F are the same. So D, let's get a different color. Right, let's try green. D and F are the same. Right. And the total area of the garden is 200 meters squared. So I'm going to add this total is 200 meters squared. Just so that I know that I've got it. Then I've got all the information, and now I can quite safely go and answer all the questions that are related to this, and I've got a little bit more confidence, and that's what I'm hoping that you get. But I think that maybe we should actually take a little bit of a break before we go into the questions. How do you think, Ty?
I think so too. Before they get into the real meat of it.
Absolutely.
I think they still need to just process right. These are the measurements, and they need to set that up. Make sure you have your measurements on the side, you know, how you do your calculations and all that stuff. And then we're going to tackle the question. But for now, guys, you know the drill. Just take a little bit of a break, grab some water, grab some snacks, so you make sure that you don't have to leave again while we're teaching. So guys, for now, see you after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. I hope you had a nice little break and you're ready and you're focused and you've got a little snacks that you can just nibble on while we're working. But for now, I hope you're paying attention. You've got your pens and your pads out and you're making notes. You know, I always tell you that, because without notes, you will probably fail, because no one actually has a photographic memory. They tell you, yo, it's possible. No, it's a lie. You need notes. For now, I'm going to hand you over to Haley. Haley, take it away.
Thanks, Ty. Okay, guys, let's get into the questions. So, in what unit is area given? Now, guys, this is a really simple question. And the unit that they give us here, well, they've given it to us in the thing, is meters squared. Nice, easy marks to kind of gently ease into the question. Now, I realize that I've made all these marks on this paper, and I'm going to be moving to the next page. So let's try to see if we remember those lines. So quickly, we had, this was 35, and this was the same as this, and B was the same as E, and I think that should be fine. Right, so what is the next part of the question is, what is the area of circle E? Well, that's quite an easy question. Circle E, we've labeled it, and it is the same as circle B. They've given us the area of circle B, so clearly it is 15 meters squared. I mean, how easy can this be? 15 meters squared. And I know what happens, guys, you panic. But there's nothing hard about this. Right, F. What did they want? F. Let's go back to F. Well, F we've labeled is exactly the same as D. D is 21, therefore F is 21. So really is an easy question. 21 meters squared. And I know you guys are going to probably think, yeah, but this is an easy question. This has been taken out of an exam that was set for grade 10s. So it's not necessarily that we're doing easy questions on TV. You know, there are such easy questions around. Next part of the question. So, I think that I'm going to leave those labels, but I am going to add that this was 35. I'm sure I'm going to need that at some stage. 35 meters squared. What is the ratio of the area of circle B to circle A? And simplify your answer. And this is another important thing, that things come up that we did earlier, like the skills that we used. Remember when we did ratio? Well, all of a sudden it's coming up here now with area. And you kind of think, how they're related? Well, they just related them. So how do we do ratio? It's one number to the other. So we're looking at circle B. No, purple's not going to work. Let's try yellow. We're looking at B to circle A. So I need those numbers. What is circle B? Circle B is 15, and circle A is 12. So I've got 15 meters to 12 meters. Now, to simplify this, I can use my calculator. On a scientific calculator, it's really easy. And without a scientific calculator, you're going to have to kind of write it as a fraction. So let's write it as 15 over 12 and make it the smallest that it can possibly be. So okay, if we divide by 3, we're going to divide that by 3, that becomes 5, and divide that by 3 will be 4. So my ratio would be 5 to 4. If you've got a scientific calculator, I'm going to show you how easy that is. I say 15 divided by 12, and it gives it to me as a fraction, 5 over 4. But we can't rely on that because remember, you don't have to have a scientific calculator. So moving back to the question, have we answered the question? What is the ratio of the area? We've got that. Simplify your answer. We have done that. Again, easy question. Let's move on to the next part of the question. Next part of the question says, calculate the area that is covered by the bridge. So, where's our bridge? There's our bridge. Let's add this 35 here. Our bridge is a rectangle. What's the area of a rectangle? The length times the breadth. Now I'm going to add length and breadth because I said to you, it makes it easier in the long run if you add all these numbers and letters. So my area, oh, purple's not going to work. Changing colors today, let's go with green. The area is equal to the length times breadth. Now this is another thing that I find important. If you write out the formula, it makes it easier for you to actually get it correct. So you know what you're doing, rather than just going in and answering. Also, it makes it easier for your examiner or your teacher to understand what you were thinking and what you were doing. So the length I said of the bridge, let's go back to the bridge. I said my length was 2 meters. So I'm going to now substitute 2 meters. And the breadth was 4 meters. Now, if you'd like, at this point you can leave out the units. So it might be easier for you to say, well, it's actually 2 times 4. Just so that you don't get confused with what that M represents, because it's a unit. So let's multiply this and we get 8, and my answer is meters squared. Now that is important, that it's meters squared. If I did it this way, well, 2 times 4 is 8, but I must add the units. So we get meters squared. So whenever you're working with your calculations and when you're practicing, you will work out for yourself which is easier for you. If you'd like to leave out the units until your final answer, that's perfect. But don't forget the units. So we've calculated the area that's covered by the bridge. Let's move on to the next part of the question. I can go down. Calculate the area of the garden that will be planted with lawn. Now, this is quite a complicated question. 4 marks, a little bit harder, and we need to think this through. Let's go back to our thing. What is covered by lawn? That is the grass that we're covering. Well, the entire outline of the garden is going to be grass, except for all these shapes. Okay, my pond, not very well circled. All those shapes. So I'm going to take the area of all my gardens, where we're going to be planting plants, and I'm going to minus it from the total area of the total area of the garden. So if I remember correctly, this was 35. meters squared. If I see that this was 21 meters squared, and that was the same as B, which was 15 meters squared, I've now got all these areas. I'm just deleting that so I can see the 9. Right, what was my total area of the pond? My total area of the pond, just trying to find it here, was, okay, lost it. Total area of the pond, just have to look at my notes, was 200 meters squared. The total was 200 meters squared. So I'm going to take the total area and minus those few. So let's add these all up. And in fact, I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to say it's 12 plus 15 plus 9 plus 21 plus 15 plus 21 plus my pond of 35. Remember, my bridge is not important. It's on the pond. So we don't have to take into account that 8. Let's add that up. Let's get a calculator out. So I had 12 plus 15 plus 9 plus 21 plus 15 plus 21 plus 35. Get a total of 128 meters squared. So my total is 128. Let's write that. Whoops, what color? And what happened to my color? 128 meters squared. And now I can do the calculation. I'm going to show the calculation again. So let's find some more space here. My area, and I always like to actually write out what I'm doing. So my area is equal to the total minus the plants and pond. Right, and now we've calculated that. So that was 128 meters squared. Now, in your books, of course, you would have shown those calculations of the 15 plus the 9 plus the 12 and whatever it was. So we're taking our total of 200 minus 128, and we can leave out the meters squared if you like. So I'm going to show you without the meters squared, and let's do that calculation. On my calculator, I've got 200 minus 128. And I get 72. So my answer to this question is 72. 72 what? It was 72 meters squared. The reason I said I'm going to leave out the meters squared is I know sometimes when you write this 200, especially when you have meters squared, my kids sometimes get confused and think that that's 200 squared, and it's totally different to 200 meters squared. So you decide which way you want to work, and that's fine. Practice will decide what you're doing. Have we answered the question correctly? Calculate the area of the garden that will be planted with lawn. 72 meters squared. Perfect. Let's see the next part of the question. Right. Miss Bloom needs 25 ranunculus to cover 1 meter squared. Do you know what a ranunculus looks like?
I have no clue.
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Ranunculus. Okay,
Sounds
I have
interesting,
no
though.
idea, but it's probably a nice-looking plant. Ask them on Facebook if they know what a ranunculus is. Okay, she needs 25 to cover 1 meter squared. How many plants must Miss Bloom buy to cover the whole of the circle C? So we know we need 25 for 1 meter squared. We need to know how big is C. So let's go back to our drawing. C is 9 meters squared. So we want 9 meters squared. Hey, let's delete our C. So this is a ratio. What are we doing to 1 to get 9? We are timesing it by 9. So what do we do here? We say 25 times 9. So let's show the working here. We're going to say, let's move up a little bit. We're going to say 25 times 9. And that'll give us our answer. We can use our calculator if you like. 25 times 9. And she needs 225 ranunculus. So 225. I'm going to say plants because I'm not even sure how to spell it. Okay, so there's your answer. And remember that in this area and these measurement questions, there are other questions. You might get a percentage question. You might get, like we have with ratios. So it's important to know all those skills that we did earlier. Right, let's see if we can move on to the next part of the question. I think we're moving on to the next question. Right, we're on our next question. Question 2. Consider the floor plan of Kagiso's kitchen below and answer the questions that follow. So before we carry on with Kagiso's kitchen, let's just analyze what his kitchen looks like. Well, we've got a distance of 5 meters here, 7.5 meters there, 2 meters, 6.5 meters. I know we've got 2 meters. This is 2 meters. And we're missing a few values. We're missing this value. We're missing that value. So I think that we're going to need those values at a later stage. His question, and this is where I said to you it's important, and I highlighted, I'm going to try and highlight again. I don't know where the normal highlighters are. Let's try highlight. Right, what I mean is this plus that, when we've got it, is equal to that plus that. Okay, so when we've got a rectangular shape with 90-degree angles, then your opposite sides are equal. And let's find another color. Let's use the bright colors. That side there will be equal to that plus that plus that. And that's an important fact to remember. So I think I made it nice and bright. I hope that it doesn't confuse you totally. Let's see what the question is. It says, calculate the area of the floor. Well, I'm going to delete my colors. I need the area of the floor. Right. But I've got a funny shape. So what do? We take a deep breath, we relax, and we make it into shapes that we know. So they've actually already cut it for us. So find a pen, let's use red, and we're going to cut it into 3 rectangles. And we're going to calculate the area of each of the rectangles, and then we will add them all together. That'll give us our total area. So going to need these missing values because I've got 5 meters as my length, but I don't know what my breadth is. And here I've got 2 meters. Now, in actual fact, I do have that 2 meters represents that 2 meters there. So I know that that's 2 meters. So I'm missing this. So what do I know? I know that this side over here is 7.5. Let's try a different color. Right. I know that that side, let's see if purple works, is 7.5 meters. And I know from here to here is 4 plus 2. That's 6 meters. So what am I missing? The balance. I'm taking my 7.5 minus my 6 meters gives me 1.5 meters. So that is actually 1.5 meters. And then what I like to do is I like to actually label my picture so I know what I'm doing and I can explain to everybody that's looking at the work what's happening. So the area of the floor is going to be, let's find green. The area is actually going to be the area of 1 plus 2 plus 3. So let's look at the area of 1 is 5 times 1.5 because it's my area is, let's say, length times breadth of 1 plus length times breadth of 2 plus the length times breadth of 3. And you can work them all separately or you can work them out all together. So here we had my length of 5 times 1.5. Okay? I'm also going to actually add the length and the breadth in here. Then this is my length. Oh, I need to work out that length. That length is the total there. Where did we go? 6.5 plus 2. So this length is 8.5. So I'm going to work that out. I need to, and I know that that's 4. So my area of 2 is length of 6.5 times 4. And lastly, I've got this little, what should be a square, but doesn't look like a square, of 2 meters by 2 meters. Let's do these calculations quickly, and I'm going to do each one separately. So I've got 5 times 1.5, which is 7.5. Whoops. That's 7.5 plus 6.5 times 4. 6.5 times 4, which is 26. Plus 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, these are all meters squared, but I'm going to add them up quickly. So this is quite easy for me to add. That's 30, that disappeared. Where did it go? So we've got a total of 37.5 meters squared. I think that we need a little bit of a break before we move on to the next part of the question.
Okay.
How
no
are we
problem.
doing?
We're actually good. So far, so good. I'll just take it that the guys are understanding what's going on because it's just a bit quiet on the page.
Very quiet.
Yes. But, by the way, we got one of the students, Kashifa. She has one of the matrics, but she's always on and always awesome to have her. She actually found out what a ranunculus is.
Oh, what is a ranunculus?
It's a flowering plant in the buttercup family, apparently.
Okay.
So now we know.
Thank you very much for that.
And on that note, guys, make sure you stick around. We're going to be back right after this break. Welcome back, Mindsetters, to this grade 10 session. Guys, the page is so quiet. Like, so quiet. Like, if it was like 3D, you know, there'd be like spiders crawling on it because it's so quiet. It's dead. But guys, chat. If you're lost anywhere, even if you're not, just say, hi, I'm getting where you're going. But okay, guys, for now, this is the last segment. So guys, if you really have questions, start sending them in now to get them answered. For now, I'm going to hand over to you, Haley.
Thanks,
Take it away.
Dan. We really want to hear from you guys. Now, if you were paying attention before the break, you would have noticed that I made a silly, careless mistake. It happens. So we need to go back and work out where my mistake was. My area 1 was 5 by 1.5. Got that. Okay. My area 2, I calculated my length as 8.5, and then what did I do? I used 6.5 in the calculation. So this is where we made our mistake. So we actually need to add, it was 8.5 times 4. So I'm going to actually cancel that, pretend it never happened, and make this 8.5 times 4, and that answer we need to place in there. That's going to be wrong. So let's get our calculator out and see we've got, well, 8.5 times 4 is in actual fact 34. So we need to add that. Then I'm going to add my 7.5 plus my 4, and I get an answer of 45.5. And that sounds a bit better to me. So this was, get that answer out, 34. And finally we had 45.5 meters squared. That doesn't look right. So let's do that again. 45.5 meters squared. So guys, it does happen. And that's what's important about actually going and checking your work to see, have I done it correctly? So let's move on to the next part of the question. Now, it says, Kagiso decides to replace the linoleum flooring in his kitchen with tiles. The tiles that he has chosen are square, that's an important fact, and they're measuring 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters. And I always like to draw a picture of what they look like. So we've got a square, and that's 40 centimeters by 40 centimeters. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. Calculate the area of each tile in meters squared. Now guys, I can't stress this enough. Look at what your answer wants your units to be and convert first. Because once we've calculated the area of the tile in centimeters squared, it is harder to convert to meters squared. But it's easy in one dimension. So what I'm going to do, and the reason I say that, let me just show you on the side, is if I take a square that is 1 meter by 1 meter, my area of the square is 1 meter squared, because it's 1 times 1. But if I convert it to centimeters, it's 100 centimeters by 100 centimeters. My area is in fact it's 10,000 centimeters squared. So it's not such an easy conversion. So it really makes sense to convert first. Okay, so let's see. If we don't need that, I'll leave that on. Right, calculate the area of each tile in meters squared. So what I'm going to do, actually, let's delete this. And so we've got some space. And I'm going to convert first. So my 40 centimeters becomes, I divide by 100, because there are 100 centimeters in a meter, and I get 0.4 meters. So my area is length squared. Remember, that was our formula. So we have 0.4 squared. or 0,4 times 0,4 if you're using a normal calculator. So let's get our calculator out, work out our area. 0,4 squared, the squared button, I'm going to use it, and my answer is 0,16 meters squared. So that equals to 0,16 meters squared. So now we've got our answer in the unit that they wanted. Then it says calculate the number of tiles that Kagiso will need to tile his kitchen. So we have his kitchen. This is the second part. We have the kitchen, and the area for the kitchen we worked out was 54. What was the area? It was 45. 45,5 meters squared. The area of the tile is 0,16 meters squared. And now I need to work out how many tiles I need. So I'm going to take the area of the kitchen and I'm going to divide it by the area of the tile. So we're going to actually, let's get another color. We're going to take 45,5 and divide it by 0,16. Whoops, divide 16. I'm leaving out the meters because they sometimes confuse me, like I've said. So what have we got? 45,5 divided by 0,16, and I get an answer of 284,375. So we need 284,375 tiles. Now I've got bells ringing in my head because I can't have a 0.375 of a tile. But this is an important question. Must I round up or must I round down? Now, if I round down, I'm going to be short of a little bit of space. So in this case, I have to round up. So I need to make that 285 tiles. It's always important to look at the context of when we're rounding up or we're rounding down. So in this case, I don't want a space empty on the floor. I need tiles in all the spaces. So rather get the little bit extra. Hey, let's move to the next part of the question. I've got our thing again. In addition to putting down new tiles, Kagiso will need to put new skirting board all the way around the edge of his kitchen floor. Calculate the perimeter of Kagiso's kitchen. Well, what did I say the perimeter is? We walk around the shape. So all I'm going to do now, we had already calculated that this was 1,5, and we know that that's 2. So I'm going to literally say I'm starting here and I'm going to walk around the floor. So the only thing I'm missing is I'm missing this value here. So we had, this was 8.5, which we had calculated earlier, minus the 5 is going to give me that, so it's 3.5 meters. So I'm going to say, well, it's 4 plus 3.5 plus 1.5 plus 5 plus my 7.5. What I can actually do is I can use the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle, because if I imagine this line moving down a little bit to there, and this line moving there, I've actually got a rectangle. So I can use my length as 8.5 and my breadth as 7.5. So what was the formula? My formula for perimeter was 2 times the length plus the breadth. And we're going to write that in here. So it was 2 times 8.5 plus 7.5. So 8.5 and 7.5 is 16 times 2, we get 32 meters. Now the question goes on to, if skirting board costs 22 Rand per meter, how much will it cost Kagiso to put skirting boards all the way around the edge of his kitchen? Now, another thing I want to point out is that if you don't know what skirting boards are, don't panic. We know that it's something that's going around the edge of his kitchen because they asked us to calculate the perimeter, and then they tell us, well, it's going the edge of his kitchen. So don't panic with the English of the question. We know it's 22 Rand per meter. So what have we got here? We've got 22 Rand for 1 meter. We want to know how many meters do we need? We need 32 meters. We want 32 meters, And again, it's a ratio. So what do? I'm going to times by 32. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to times by 32. So my answer is 22 times 32 meters. And I get an answer of, let's use a calculator, 22 times 32. And it's 704 is my answer. And I want to ask you 704 what? Whoops. Rands. 704. We're looking at the cost. So how much will it cost Kagiso to put skirting around his kitchen? It will cost him 704 rand. So I think that we're finished with Kagiso's question. I wonder if we've got time for... No, we're not. We've still got Kagiso. Right. Kagiso wants to paint the kitchen blue. I think that'll be a nice color for the kitchen. If the height of the kitchen is 2.25 meters, calculate the total wall surface area to the kitchen. So I've got Kagiso wants to paint. I think we need a, let's find some white. We need to add a T because he definitely wants to paint and not paint. Right. So now if I've got the height of the kitchen, now what I'm looking at, if I think about this as a picture, I'm looking at his entire kitchen and the height is 2.25 meters. I know the perimeter of his kitchen. I've already calculated that as 32 meters. So clearly, I just need to multiply the one by the other because I've got my length of the entire kitchen and I've got my breadth, which in this case is the height. So I've drawn it as a whole kitchen, if I unfolded it. Unfold the kitchen. So if the height of the kitchen is 2.25 meters, calculate the total surface area of the walls. So all we need to do is the surface area is the area, is my length, left out the formula, length times breadth. So I've got my 32 times 2.25. Let's get a calculator out. 32 times 2.25, and we get an answer of 72. 72 meters squared. Meters squared. Now, when answering a question like this, guys, don't panic. We've worked out the perimeter, so I knew that I could take the entire perimeter. But you could have seriously gone back to this and worked out the area of each one. It just seems like a lot of work to do for this mere 3 marks. So just be aware that sometimes in like the previous part of a question, there's like a hint of what you need to use, or you need to use that to move forward. So in this case, it was using the perimeter rather than actually going and calculating each wall individually. So I think that I'm running out of time, but I'm quickly going to read this. So it says the kitchen has 1 door measuring 1.5 by 2.1 meters and 2 windows. It gives me the measurements. Calculate the wall area that has to be painted. I've calculated the whole surface wall. Now I'm going to take away the doors and the windows. So just kind of read the questions carefully and try and make sense of what is it that they're actually asking and what is it that they want. And I hope that I've actually helped everyone today. So I think take it away.
Too. Well, I don't know. Maybe do you want to just do a little quick recap to make sure everybody gets that measurements and all that kind of stuff, like what you guys covered today?
Today we basically did our area and perimeter, and they must just stick with the formulas and don't forget units.
Exactly, guys. Remember, always, always, always use those formulas, because if you don't use formulas, then why are you answering the question? Because you're not going to get the answer. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys had fun. And I just want to send a quick shout out to Stephanie, because she was like, "Hi, Ty, can you please say hi to my grandma and her sister?" And I'm like, "Hi, grandma, sister, how are you?" But for me and Haley, guys, have a good one. See you next time. Bye.